Katie, just tell us a little bit about your experience with Australia, when you've been to Australia for a comedy tour, and what those shows were.
Sure. So I first came over to Australia in 2013, and I knew I wanted to do a one-woman show, and it was the first one I'd ever done. So a dear friend of mine ran 16th Street in Melbourne, and so I plugged myself into some classes there and met some incredible people, who then introduced me to Larry Moss, who is the guru of all gurus. And he not only was incredibly inspirational with writing, new writers, understanding writing and performance, but he was very much used to say things like, "I've got good news and bad news. The bad news is no one is coming to save you, and the good news is no one is coming to save you. And it's a case of don't complain to me if you're not doing 8 hours a day on your craft and then you haven't got work." So it really sort of gave me the confidence and the, right, let's do this. And so I did my first show, which was called Kate Middleton Show Queen, all about being Kate Middleton's lookalike at the time of the royal wedding. And I took that to Adelaide Fringe, and then I transferred to Red Benny's which is no longer, in Melbourne for the Melbourne Comedy Festival.
That show was quite a hit, wasn't it?
Well, it was, there's me and with straight hair and a bit of makeup, and I guess the voice. I was wearing the blue dress that Kate Middleton was very famous for in her engagement, and so yes, I was on the front page of the Australian, and the press picked it up a lot because it was an interesting idea, and the Adelaide being very fond of the royal family, they were very keen on. So a lot of people used to say to me, "Have you done a show before?" And I said, no. And they said, right, well, you don't normally get, this many tickets sold, or, so I was very lucky, but I guess it was a gimmick really with the, Kate Middleton was in the title, and I had myself in the, on the front page, as I say, looking like her. It was a rookie show though, Jim. It was me learning my craft. It was me exploring things. And I have to say, I'm just so grateful to the Australian people, the Australian audiences and the press, because so kind and supportive, particularly when you really lay your heart and your vulnerability on the line when you do something new, but particularly in performance. And it didn't always go perfectly, but I guess that's where you learn as well.
And your second tour was with Grace.
Yes, that's it. So then I came back, and I understand that the circuit starts in Perth, and then Adelaide, and then Melbourne, and then people come back and they go to Brighton, which is where I am now, and then they head to Edinburgh. So it's sort of it's a wonderful circuit that you can do. So by the time you get to Edinburgh, which is full on and not forgiving, particularly with audience numbers and obviously the finances behind if you're self-producing or if you've got funding and you're answering to financiers. So I thought, well, fantastic excuse to go back to Australia. And yes, I came back and I did Adelaide and in Tuxedo Cat, and then I did Melbourne at the Butterfly Club with my show Grace, which was all about a gender fluid character who had been performing as the male half of a cabaret act and now wanted to come on as the female version of themselves. So it was, and I played a few different characters, as you saw. So it was also experimentation with what I wanted to do. I ended up singing in the Edinburgh show, and yes, just exploring what kind of theatre creator I wanted to be, and some bits didn't work and some bits did, and again you learn and you're inspired, and it's not just obviously doing your own show, but it's being plugged into the incredible festivals. I mean, Adelaide is just amazing because obviously you've got the artist bar, So there's a real sense of community with artists, where you can all go, and it's just one bar. Whereas obviously at Edinburgh, the big four venues, the Pleasance, Assembly, and Gilded Balloon, they all have their own bars. So you're not sort of as one, you're more sort of tribes. And I love the fact that not only in Adelaide you get the one bar, but also there's lots of performances. So a lot of performers are obviously working in the evening. They don't get to see shows. They wouldn't want to see something before, or they're flyering, trying to get people to see their show. So it's a lovely opportunity for everyone just to put tools down, but still get a medley, a variety kind of show of what acts are out there, particularly amazing cabaret and comedy and burlesque and circus. Obviously, the circus out in Adelaide and Australia is second to none, in my opinion. And then obviously, Melbourne was incredible as well. Melbourne, I always think of as my second home. It was just it was so good to me, not just the people, but I just felt really myself there. And obviously, I took huge steps in finding who I was as an artist, and Melbourne accepted me and gave me confidence, and I'll never ever forget it for that.
So, take us through it, how the coronavirus has hit you. And I thought a good way to frame this was to tell me where you were creatively before it hit to where you are now.
Sure. So I've been extremely lucky with the coronavirus. Before everything hit, I was planning to move down to Brighton, which is where I am now, which is on the south coast of England, with an incredible fringe festival. It's the best one in England, and an amazing festival as well. And I was planning to move down, so I had taken some time off because I was doing, as all artists do, I was doing some day jobs as well to try and fund shows and fund my creativity. But I'd taken the decision to have some time off and write. I wanted to write my next show, which is my third show, called An Education We Didn't Have. And I also wanted to... I thought I would have the luxury of, when you move house, and sometimes it's a case of, you just pack everything in boxes and move it down, and then you don't sort it and you just put it in another cupboard. I had a study that just had so many projects on the go, and I literally went through everything to sort it all out. My next show, my stand-up comedy I want to do, a TV documentary I want to write, a film I started writing, and then some other projects, like horse breeding I'm terribly interested in, and my best friend breeds amazing show jumpers over in Madrid, so all my research and training in that, and horse whispering. So I literally went through, and everything is sorted and organised and recycled, and I went to the charity shop, and I felt really... You know how they say sometimes if you are tidy, you feel like a tidy mind, and you feel able to then sit down and create. So I felt like that. And I felt as if I had the opportunity to, as I say, be writing this show. There was a lot of amazing opportunities open at the beginning of the year for writers and new shows. There's the Verity Bargate that was open, which is attached to the Soho Theatre. The Soho is one of the best venues in the world, I think. But it's a fringe venue in London that a lot of shows start in before they go to Edinburgh. We know big names like Fleabag and those sort of things will start. But also it's where you want to transfer after you've finished Edinburgh. So they have a show. You can apply with new writing, and obviously the person who wins gets a run and gets some funding, and it's an incredible accolade. And then there were a few other things open as well. A few other theatres, the Fimbra, were looking at new work, and then obviously it was time to move house. And I moved house on the 20th of March, which was 3 days before lockdown. And I felt like I was in Speed, the film with Keanu Reeves, when everyone's going on the bus. Will we get there? Will we get there? With the removal men. And I got here and I just thought, obviously they'd touched everything. So I thought, well, I'm just going to sit here and not unpack, and I'm just write, because the BBC had their comedy window open. So I rewrote a version for the show for BBC, and then I wrote the Knit Dark Award was open then in May. So to be honest, I was extremely grateful, because it forced me to be focused. I couldn't go anywhere, and no distractions, because of course I was really looking forward to the Brighton Fringe and the festival, which happens at the beginning of May to the beginning of June. And I normally see 4 or 5 shows a day. I've got some of my best friends from university down here, and some other really great friends, and we always hang out and have a great time. And the restaurants are second to none here, so we always go out for dinner. And then there's, my artist friends who are playing, and I'll always buy them a drink and chat to them and catch up. So, it was not going to be a quiet month, but I was forced to. And what it meant was I just had this luxury of focused time to write. And so I finished on the 4th of May. I put it down, and then I sent it to some friends to read. And you know what, Jim? It's such a luxury, because I think so many people, when the festivals come round, obviously, you're asked to write your little blurb about what your show's about. And I really do think the majority of us haven't written the show before we write the blurb. So it's always just this vague, it's a story of a woman in love and she's exploring life, and it's just all a bit vague. And I think what a lot of people have now had is, because Edinburgh Fringe, Edinburgh might be going, there might be digital events and people live streaming from home now, which is very exciting, but it's not going to be obviously the same. But some people won't be doing the show, so they'll have had time to put a show down, is what I've realised in my little creative life so far in writing shows, is if I can put a show down for a couple of months and actually send it out to some friends, one who's in the industry who really knows what they're talking about, particularly with new writing, maybe another actor, and then also a friend or family member that would just be your normal audience member that would come in and go, what is this about? Or I have no idea what you're talking about this, or that's really in-house as a theatre maker. So the luxury of being able to put it down, and then things percolate, and then suddenly there's a race course up here in Brighton. I go for long walks by the sea and everything. And then suddenly I go, what about if I put that in it? Or, actually, and suddenly I think your subconscious has got time to piece things together, that when you're in that sort of juggernaut racing towards a festival, and you normally are self-producing, and obviously the writing is the most important thing to get right, but sometimes because you're so, the writing can't improve unless you improve it, and your performance is only as good as the writing. So both times I've been writing, and then I don't give myself, the actress, enough time to then pick it up as the actress and go, right, what are we talking about here? Very different hats. And so I end up even doing script changes in previews, and then stumbling through, a couple of, particularly where you've edited or you haven't edited chunks, you've edited lines. So you're sort of coming up on your monologue all cut, and then you're like, whoa, I've cut a line here today, and it's just a bit, you sort of stagger through it. So there's the luxury. And then also, I think a lot of people are in lockdown, they've had the chance to plan their career. They've had the chance to upskill. I did a 21-day self-tape challenge with Puro Casting, Manuel Puro, who's an amazing casting director here. And it was self-taping because I've done mainly theatre for the last few years. I haven't been so much involved in film and television casting, or commercial. So self-taping to me was quite scary. God, how do you do it? The technical aspect of it all. What backdrop do you use? What lighting? What microphone? And he just did the most incredible. He takes on lots of actors from around the world. If anyone's watching this, I highly recommend it. And you all give each other feedback, and you do a monologue a day. And it also gives you that, right, well, you just got to go with it. Get a casting, you just got to do it overnight, try and do it within 24 hours, 48 hours, and do your best. So there's that, which I feel a real achievement. And 21 days solid, normally in normal life would all have other responsibilities, whether it's, you know, a day job or popping out to do voiceovers or, you know, just being distracted by, you know, best friend's birthday or something like that, or having to go to the supermarket and then you get, oh, you know, pop into a clothes shop or whatever, you know. So it's just this focused time. And the other thing that's happened, I think, really in the industry is obviously casting directors, actors, directors have all been sort of sitting there. Work just was really busy, and then work suddenly wasn't. And there's been some collectives here where online casting sites like Spotlight, Mandy, and a few others, and a creative initiative, they've started doing webinars with lots of casting directors in animation or film or theatre. And these people have actually, I'm sure they would have want to have done it before, but they've had the time to not give back to the community because they were always, you know, giving back in their work, but they had time to help actors and creators define what, you know, what they're looking for, and confidence as well. You know, a lot of people, I guess, have felt, a lot of actors can always feel as if they're outside the community and the industry if they're not working. And particularly some of these casting directors were saying things like, we love new faces, we love it if you've been a lawyer all your life and then suddenly you want to be an actor, and if you've got the skills, of course we'll look at you. Whereas that person might not take that chance because they think, well, what am I going to know about, you know, acting against all these people who've been acting for years, or people who've had a family coming back and they don't feel as confident, they've got a new look and all this sort of thing. So I think it's done a world of good for a lot of creatives. And then finally, there's been a lot of initiatives, monologue writing initiatives and competitions, all based around lockdown. And so that's been, you know, great deadlines for people to write about their experience, which is obviously really interesting. Journaling, I guess, a form of journaling, and then getting it out how you're feeling is obviously really helpful. And then putting it into creativity can just make you feel just a new person. And I think that's probably been incredibly helpful for a lot of people. And then obviously people have then been putting the work online, and casting directors, as I say, have then got the time to watch it. And, you know, people behind the scenes are starting to create work. So that's that. And then the one final thing is voiceovers, luckily, hasn't been affected. In actual fact, a lot of people have wanted more voiceovers because a lot of companies have had to change their messaging. And so a lot of people are looking for voiceover artists with their own home studio. And there's home studios and home studios. You know, it depends on what sort of level your clients need your quality to be. And I've been doing voiceovers for 17 years now, and had an agent in London for just over 10. So I've got some wonderful clients. Currently I'm the voice of Clarins and Cadbury Heroes and a few things like that. And so mine needs to be broadcast quality. And I've been looking into having my own home studio, which is going to be here, which is why it's a bit of a bare room because I'm waiting for it to arrive in a couple of days. And I'm getting one of the studio bricks, amazing, slightly build it like Lego. And I should then be able to have my own little business, which is huge step creatively for me, and empower my life to then, hopefully I won't have to do other sorts of work just to bring in money to do my shows. You know, hopefully I will just be able to be self-sufficient with my voiceovers, and it doesn't take too much time. Obviously, the getting the clients and talking to the clients and looking after them and the marketing and the invoicing, that sort of thing when you run a business, VAT returns, is full on, but great to be learning all that sort of business acumen as well. So for me, it's just been the biggest change of my life, Jim. It's been a huge opportunity, and I'm very, very grateful for my parents who sort of are helping me put up the money for my studio, and then I'm going to be paying them back 25% when they get jobs. So yes, it's been incredible, really, and a great time to be. Obviously, you listen to all the news, and it's the most disturbing thing a lot of us have ever been through. But I've just been lucky that I've been able to just watch a certain amount and then understand what's going on and then have my creativity to focus on. Well, I've entered it into their competition, which they're open to yes, a comedy window. It's a competition, so they're not necessarily looking for the script, they're looking for new writers. So it's almost a sample of your work that they might be interested in me as a new writer.
But that's an avenue that you would not otherwise have gone down had things been normal?
Do you know, I don't think I would have had the time to have given it my all, because I would have been distracted with having to do other work or, as I say, other commitments that just come up. So yes, it's very much, I was able to do my best. Now that my best might not be enough to be selected by the BBC. Obviously the BBC is the BBC. But I was able to sit back and think I really couldn't have done much more. I did my best, and that was due to having the space and the time and the focus because we were in lockdown.
Right. Now, you weren't going to have a show at the Brighton Fringe, were you? You were just going to go and hang out and network with people and talk to people and get whatever inspiration that you get from a Brighton Fringe comedy festival. So that was the plan, but because that didn't happen, you basically were able to develop this current show to fine polish. Is that fair to say?
Well, I definitely think it's as good as I can make it, but now I want to pick it up and do some more rewrites. And I don't know whether you're ever finished with a show. Mm-hmm. I think you can always tinker with it, but I think there comes a certain level where I'd like to send it to directors now and find some people to work with. Yeah.
Is it not an artist's motto that a work is never properly finished, it's only abandoned?
I've not heard about that one. Yeah, I think there gets a point where Grace, for example, I rewrote it after Edinburgh because it was only when I had some time, and I read this incredible review from a gender fluid reviewer, and I was so interested to see what they thought. And every day I checked, has it come out? Has it come out? No, it didn't. And then I thought, oh no, it never came out. And it came out a month after Edinburgh. And I read it and I just went, I completely agree with everything that you say. And I wrote notes on it. And I said, this is what they liked. This is what they didn't like. I completely agree with all of this. And had I had just a bit of space and time, had I been able to put the show down for a few weeks or a month, I would have maybe come to those conclusions. And I thought, right, so there was an amazing competition in Milan for new plays all about LGBTQI discussions and issues. And I thought, I'm going to just have that as a target, and I'm going to rewrite the show. And then once it's done and it's as best as I can do it, I'll submit it, and then it goes in the drawer, and then I start again. Yeah, so it's abandoned.
Can you just tell us a little bit about this new show?
Sure. The Education We Didn't Have is going to be my third solo theatre show, obviously with comedy characters as well. And it's about an out-of-work performer who is approaching a milestone birthday and gives up and thinks, okay, I'm going to try on normal choices and happiness, but ends up in a clowning retreat. It's almost three versions of one person's life that they could have led. And there's a lot of me in it. But there's a lot of other stuff as well, obviously. I think when you do write, particularly for yourself to perform, you do write with your own memories or things that you've been exploring. And it's exploring, the reason I called it The Education We Didn't Have is I don't know about you, but the things that I was taught at school, things like Oxbow Lakes and, random things and quadratic equations, they weren't that useful for me in my life. I would have liked perhaps things all about communication and relationships and financial planning, how to do pensions. And, the country wouldn't be in the state that it's in if we had had a better education. I think due to lockdown, it was realised that most households and individuals are one paycheck away from bankruptcy. We haven't been taught how to look after ourselves financially, emotionally, creatively, and I think the curriculum of many schools is one of the things that hasn't changed in so long, and I think it really needs to. And so I was addressing that, and I was talking about creativity and how the world doesn't seem to be set up for creatives. Particularly you look at what's happened. I don't know what's happening with government helping Australian artists, but over here, a lot of us have fallen through the cracks because they've helped people who are self-employed, who have done more than 50% of their work, self-employed. But due to the portfolio nature of how we all work as performers, some of us will have a day job and that's PAYE. And if that's over 50%, we've got nothing. Yes, they've just done a huge announcement, 1.7 billion investment, but we don't know how that's coming down. Is that going to organisations or individuals? So it's sort of discussing that as well. Just to be honest, society seems to be broken. It doesn't seem to be fit for purpose anymore. And I think a lot of us, you switch on the news now and it's almost like you're watching a film, what with obviously the pandemic and the influence on mass unemployment, and it's just carnage out there, and then Russian involvement in things, and, the world is not coming together, the old things of competition between states. No one's really trying to come together and find a vaccine. It's all just competition and backbiting. It's just broken. And I think a lot of us feel that way. So I was exploring that. It must change. I know that they were trying to make story time compulsory. Opening up people to their own creativity, whatever that might be. We're facing two big things after we get over this pandemic, please God. We're facing the future of automation, and we're facing planetary decline sharply. And in the things that are really hitting me is in something like 15 years, 98% of all accountants are going to be automated. There's going to be such another wave of mass unemployment. People that do administration in all sorts of industries are going to lose their jobs. Some people have spent their lives dedicating it to accountancy, law, those kind of industries. They're not just going to lose their job; they're going to lose their purpose, and it's going to be. They need to be creating a new education for the people who are coming through, the next generations who are at school now, and they need to be inspiring and upskilling the current workforce, because we're going to be facing real trouble if we aren't already. The mass unemployment that's going to be after the pandemic is astronomical, but people are going to want to cut costs, and that age of automation could come quicker because businesses are going to want to, get up on their feet more, and hiring a person might be more expensive than hiring a robot. And I just think that the curriculum is therefore so important, because people need to be thinking about different sorts. Not that our education system really was vocational anyway. But it really needs to be thinking about entrepreneurship, creativity, and I don't just mean creativity as in art forms or performing arts, but creative solutions about things where people can, design a better town or village, or so that we are more of a community base and things like that. So I just think that the education system needs to drastically change fast. Otherwise, we're going to be in more trouble than we already are.
You're setting up a home studio for your voiceover work. Are you using that to subsidise your comedy work?
Yes, so I've been working in radio and television commercials and corporate work for a long time now, as I say, sort of 17 years. And it's it's good money if you can get the job. It is dead man's shoes to get into an agency though, but it's really changed in the last 10 years. You can get a lot of work on online casting websites, and also a lot of people, for example, Gen Z are a different sort of employers. They will hunt out people on social media and individuals online and look at your website, which is why I'm editing mine at the moment, and they'll want to employ you directly. It's a different sort of setup. So you're able to approach clients now directly, which is really interesting. And yes, I very much hope, I'm also wanting to go into gaming, just on a gaming reel, because lots of different characters. It's so much fun because it's more realistic acting than, say, animation. But I also really want to go into animation, which is obviously more your big characters, and audiobooks. All of those avenues are obviously using just the voice, but also using my acting skills as well. And I'm very much hoping that with some narration, I do medical narration and lots of other e-learning as well, that is going to be a huge avenue which is going to hopefully support me and keep me on the road.
Are you self-financed or are you doing this with assistance?
I'm doing this with assistance. I'm very much hoping that I will be able to be self-sufficient with the voiceovers. That's why my parents are giving me this loan, upfront loan, to help me. And I think, like a lot of other artists, we're all on universal credit with the government. So I just don't know how people are existing. And to be honest, I'm quite worried about the next couple of months because, we can't get to work. However, they have just announced that theatres will be opening in August. And you can go and socially distant. However, in order for you to be a socially distant audience, you have to be only 30% to 40% full. Well, most productions need to be 70% full in order to be commercially viable. So it doesn't work, the plans. So everyone's wanting to hear the date that, they can, stage 5, they call it, when we can then have normal audiences, because there's no point running a show with 30%, although it would be amazing. And also, you've got to look at your scripts, because in so many scripts, the actors have to be more than 1 meter, they need to be close. So it's not really working. So I'm very much hoping that voiceovers will look after me. Otherwise, I'm in trouble. Yeah. So it's giving me a huge inspiration.
Are you, Katie, getting any assistance from the government as an artist?
Yes, we have something called Universal Credit here, which is bare minimum of it doesn't cover bills, but it certainly helps towards them. And I've been able to keep going because I was very lucky to get a couple of campaigns. One was for Cadbury Heroes and one was for Clarins. And I've just been really lucky that that money has kept me going. And obviously I've not been going anywhere. So it's just been the bills and the groceries that I've had to cover. But what, if they're going to cut that universal credit, I'm not sure. But the problem is that, as I was saying, lots of performers have fallen through the trap of 50% of their portfolio of work being PAYE and employed as opposed to self-employed, which means they therefore haven't been given the self-employed assistance by the government.
Right.
And this new investment of 1.7 billion that's just been announced for the arts, because bearing in mind, I mean, tourists alone would bring in 2 billion to London Theatre. So I think it's 13 million to the UK economy that the UK creative industries created. I mean, arts and culture, 10.8 billion. So the arts and culture economy is growing faster in the UK than the general economy.
I wanted to ask you a question about voiceover work and about the current discussions that are happening in comedy about appropriateness and about colourblind casting and about woke values and so forth. We've had Ricky Gervais push back, as other comedians have, very strongly against the idea of imposing limits on comedians and what they can and can't do. He has quite prominently said that The Office could not be made today because it would have just been too restricted. Now, with voiceovers, we've had artists from the United States who have worked on The Simpsons and on Family Guy who have voiced characters of other races and so on, coming out and saying that they will no longer do voices for non-white characters, that they will now stick to, you know, their cultural realm, if you like. I'd like to know how you're processing all of this. It's a lot of information. A lot seems to be changing about, you know, what the new standards are or if anyone will abide by the standards and so on. Katie, how are you processing all of this discussion about comedy, in particular about the voiceover situation?
Well, one always has to listen and try and understand what's going on. I haven't personally come up against any decisions I've had to make because of my voice being, it's called sort of received pronunciation here. I don't really have an accent, but I don't do, my casting has never brought that question up for me. To be honest, I think comedy, it's difficult to say. Comedy, if we start telling people what they can and can't talk about, I think it's gone a step too far. I think some comedy, as long as it's tastefully done, is on the line. It's on the edge of what's okay and what's not. But it very much has to be said by someone very delicately, but cleverly. It can't ever be done in a crass way. And, you know, for example, I don't think I watched a trans a comedian down in Brighton. I remember she was amazing, and she was doing a lot of trans jokes. Now, I think it's fine for her to be doing trans jokes, but other people can't be doing trans jokes. You know, I think it has to come from your authentic self, because a lot of people are either taking the mickey out of themselves or they're taking the mickey out of how they see the world. And it has to be, therefore, done when you personally understand the issue at hand, because then only you can really find the comedy in it, because only you understand it. So I think with voiceovers, with commercials and corporate, it doesn't really come up. But I think for characterizations, for animation, what you're talking about, and I guess for gaming, I know that some casting directors I've heard talk before and say we will always open up. For example, when I was very, very aware of this when I was playing the gender fluid character, because people were like, well, "Are you gender fluid?" And I said, "Well, no, I'm not." And they said, "Well, how can you be writing about gender fluidity then?" And I understood where they came from. I was so inspired by my best friend who was transgender that I wanted to be part of the conversation, and I was being a loyal supporter. So I very much think that, it's the casting directors were saying, we will look obviously at all the transgender actors for this part. They were casting something else. We will absolutely invite. But if there's another, but where's the line? If there's a better actor, if say you've got 5 people in front of you, 3 are transgender, 2 are cis, and one of the cis people is better for the role, I don't believe in quotas. I don't believe in just taking people on because of the box that they tick. Not only is you're not always getting the right person for your business or your program or your comedy show, but it's disrespectful. I'm going to take you on because you're a woman. I mean, I have been rung by some fellow male comedians, and they've gone, "Oh, hi, babe, I haven't got a woman on tonight. Do you want to come on?" And I'm like, do you mean that you'd like to hear my comedy, or you just need me to tick a box? And I take it, I'm like, oh, right, okay, it's a little bit, not very delicate way of putting it, but, I don't really turn down gigs if they're a good one, and I'm grateful for the invitation. So I'm not sure if that sort of answers your question, Jim.
It does address a lot of the issues, and I'm going to put this on the record that what you just said about the primacy of merit over politics is now becoming a very brave thing to say. You can now get in trouble for saying, I will select someone for this role because they're the better actor, rather than picking a person of colour or a person of a certain ethnicity. That's now become almost a dangerous thing to say. So I just want to put that on the record, because that, I guess, shows the times that we're living in. And if that wasn't difficult enough, I'm now going to hit you with the Shembri challenge.
Right.
If someone came to you, one of your clients perhaps, or a new client came to you and said, absolutely love your work, blown away by your show reel, we think you're perfect for this job that we've got. It's a high-paying job, and it'll give you a regular income. We'd like you to play someone of colour. We want to hear what you're like playing whatever, a Jamaican woman, a woman of colour from America, something outside your realm. They've come to you and they want to see you. They want to see you present for this very lucrative role. We want to see you play, let's say, a woman of colour from Britain. What say you?
Oh, there's absolutely no way I would go. I would be shocked that I would be asked, and I would feel very disrespectful if I even. No, I just couldn't do it, Jim. It's just feels very wrong to me. I personally wouldn't be able to do it justice. However, there was an incredible show, one-person show, Roy Williams wrote at the National. It was the last thing I saw before lockdown. And Rafe Spall, Timothy Spall's son, incredible actors in those genes, played lots of different characters. And obviously he's doing the voices of, he wasn't saying, hello, I'm one character, hello, I'm another. He was saying, and anyway, so-and-so's mum went, blah, 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 blah. And then I went, what are you talking about? So he was sort of impersonating them. He wasn't being them. And that's a huge distinction in performance, particularly when you're playing multiple roles. And he played his mum, his friend's mum, who was Jamaican. And he did it. He got the patois down. I mean, his skills as an actor and his linguistic skills and his accent was so perfect. But he was impersonating her as him. So he was showing the fact that he thought she was gorgeous and he quite fancied her, but he was his mate's mum, so he was a bit like, this is really weird. And she was really gritty to him. She was always really, what are you doing? All this sort of, always telling him off. And so he was able to make that work. I think that's the only way I would ever, to answer your question, I would only ever take on a woman of colour if I was impersonating them. My character was impersonating them. I would never be them. It's just not authentic. And I feel as if it's completely disrespectful to the incredible actors who can authentically tell that story with 100% truth. And yeah, does that answer your question?
Well, yes, it does. But so what you're saying in that scenario is that you would not even do an audition, that you would not even present. They're coming to you and they're saying, "We'd like to see what you can do. We're so impressed with your other stuff. We think you can do this role better than anyone else we've got in our books. We'd like to see that. Can you come in and present for us?" And you would say, "Sorry, not my wheelhouse."
I would say, yeah, I don't feel comfortable with that.
Okay.
And I hope you'd consider me for other, unless it's an audiobook, that might be different, that you, and the character was impersonating a character, not being them. That is my only slight, as I say, that like Rafe Spall did. I'd never be able to do it as brilliantly as Rafe Spall, and therefore I wouldn't, I don't have the linguistic accent down. So, it would seem like a mockery of an accent at any time you haven't got an accent down, but particularly if you're doing different ethnic minorities, I think it's comes across as rude.
Hank Azaria, who did Apu in The Simpsons, even he's looking back and rethinking the wisdom of doing the character, at least for so long. But just to broaden it out a little bit, and again, just a quick response, with the whole Little Britain thing, with the guys 20 years ago doing blackface characters on Come Fly With Me and on Little Britain itself, even they have kind of stepped back now and said, well, probably wouldn't do it now, guys. What do you think of that whole issue of comedians doing blackface? In Australia, of course, we have a very high-profile case of Chris Lilly, who's an Australian actor who did Angry Boys and Summer Heights High, and Jonah from Tonga is another show. You may not have heard of them, but he has been accused of, doing blackface, and his shows were pulled down. Most of his shows were pulled down from Netflix. It's been quite a severe reaction to him. What do you think about comedians putting on makeup to play characters of other races?
I think it's a very, very delicate issue. You've really got to know your audience. You've got to know why you're doing it, and if it's in good taste. I think it's, what with everything going on at the moment and the atrocities with the police. I mean, just this morning on the news, a police officer's been suspended because found that, he was doing a similar knee on someone's neck, and it's just not. You can't be doing things, I think, at this moment like that, and I just think it's too delicate. It's too sensitive. The world is too sensitive at the moment. I think it's in perhaps in poor taste. There's plenty of other things to discuss and create comedy about. I think it would certainly feel insensitive now. But I understand why people have done it in the past. Perhaps, I think self-awareness and sensitivity has come a long way. But comedy is always on the line. And unfortunately, if it's as I say, it's almost it's got to be in good taste if anything's funny or not, and it's just I just think it's so dangerous that I really wouldn't touch it. I would feel very disrespectful. But if people have done it well in the past, I don't know. I haven't seen too much of it, to be honest. And people doing it well. Obviously, in Little Britain, I understand what you're saying.
That's fine.
It's very hard to answer, actually, Jim.
It is a very hard question, and I want to thank you again for the honesty of those quotes. You're obviously speaking from the heart, and you are answering a pretty hard question, which I would never have to face. As a voiceover artist, what do you do to take care of your voice, which is an asset to you? Do you gargle? Do you have a way of coping with coughs and colds? Do you get anxious about catching anything? Can you just tell us about that?
I guess as a voiceover artist, yeah, your voice is your work. So I do vocal exercises every day, and I really notice a difference when I don't drink alcohol. And caffeine is another one. Before you go into a voiceover studio, you shouldn't really drink caffeine for at least 2 hours, or dairy products, because it can give you a click. And you need to be warmed up as if you were doing a theatre performance. I take echinacea every day, just keep that going, because I feel as if that's a natural protection for coughs and colds. There's something called First Defense, which is an inhaler, which if I start to feel ill, because it sort of gets to the back of your throat, which is where things start, I'll use that, go straight on the echinacea, and have the manuka honey, fresh lemon, lots of ginger. I do an apple and ginger shot every morning, which I feel as if my hot lemon. I try and do my best. But then there are moments when you can't be perfect, and I sit on the beach sometimes, and we're having a glass of wine or something. And I think, oh, this is probably a bit cold on my voice, so I have a scarf or something like that. But you try your best to look after your voice, but no one's perfect, so I shouldn't really be drinking alcohol before I do jobs, and not that I drink on the way, but you know what I mean. The night before or something like that, you should. But sometimes if it's your best friend's birthday or being taken out for dinner, of course you can have a glass or two. So, yeah.
Katie Redden Clancy, you're trying to avoid the question, but I'm going to ask it again. Do you gargle?
Do I gargle? No. No, I don't. Okay. I've never done that. What, with salt water or something?
I got no idea.
Yeah. No, I haven't. Haven't ever. Actually, I lie. I think my mother once said years and years and years ago, gargle if you've got a sore throat. No, my grandmother, who was a singer, amazing singer, BBC singer, and became a big theatrical agent. She used to say, if you ever have a problem with your voice, gargle with TCP. And I don't even know whether you can get TCP anymore. It's an antiseptic. And she had, overstraining your vocal cords at a young age, and she introduced me to the protection of things. But then they smoked like troopers at that. All actors sort of smoked in those days. So she'd sort of say, "Oh, darling, make sure you gargle with TCP." As she was smoking a gulwar, So it's sort of like, right, okay, things have come on a bit.
And you did mention lemon and hot water. Do you do lemon and hot water as well?
I have before anything, I'll have a pint of water and then up some hot water with lemon, and then I'll have an apple and ginger shot. That's how I start my day. So it's like a teaspoon of Manuka honey, which is obviously incredibly strong, a good wedge of lemon, a big hunk of ginger, garlic, a clove of garlic, and a bit of whiskey. Okay. That's your hot toddy.
You know, the only thing of you on YouTube is that interview that I did with you last time you were in Melbourne. Why is there nothing else of you on YouTube? I would love to have seen you doing some stand-up or something. Is there a reason for that? Are you averse to social media, or have you just forgotten to film yourself performing? Why is there so little of you on YouTube?
It's a good question. To be honest, I haven't felt as if what I've done is good enough that I want out in the public arena that I can never take down. Theatre is very difficult to film, and comedy. You really need it to be sort of, excellent acoustics, and otherwise it just looks a bit rubbish. And so many times in festivals, just because of the venue or whatever. I mean, for example, I had a lot of things filmed in Melbourne, but then unfortunately the mic wasn't plugged in, and so I filmed 5 shows in Melbourne, and each time, unfortunately, the person that was doing the recording didn't plug in the mic. So,
oh my God!
Yeah, it was a wounder, a real wounder.
I'm just expressing a bit of grief that you went through something you should not have gone through. I'm sorry to hear that.
Had to take that one on the chin. It was complete. You know, when I found out, obviously, I think it was a real lesson to me when you self-produce and you're writing and you're performing and you have a very, very small team. I think things need to be in writing, what you expect people to do. And because conversations can be forgotten by other people where you think you've made something clear, and then suddenly you find yourself with a box of leaflets trying to get people into your show before you do a very emotional show. It's all about getting those conversations in early and getting contracts written. This is what I would love help with. Please make sure this is done. This is your responsibility. I'm doing everything else. It was a real wounder, Jim. Not only because I couldn't listen. I couldn't, as you say, I couldn't watch it back because I was just about to go to Brighton and Edinburgh, and I wanted to watch the show because I'd never seen the show. So I wanted to watch the show back so I could, me as a performer, go, why do I come on that bit? Oh, that doesn't look good. Or, to help me, direct myself as much as I could before I then saw my director again. And also, as you say, to get snippets, to try and make marketing materials, to try and send to agents, to try and send to casting directors, and to try and have as something online, because I was really proud of the Melbourne work, and I loved the theatre, and it looked great. So it was, Mercury was in retrograde, which I don't know whether you believe these things, but it does affect travel, technology, and communication. And I'm a Gemini, so Mercury is my ruling planet. So when Mercury is in retrograde, I'm a bit like, oh God, what's going to happen? And when I was told that this had happened, because I went to Sydney for a few days after Melbourne, because I just thought I just want to go to the beach, see some friends, and have some time off, and just give myself a little holiday after obviously quite a huge mission. And I sat down and I started to watch it, and I was like turning up the volume going, what's happened? What's happened? And then I texted a couple of people that were on it, and they went, oh, yeah, I don't know. I didn't ever check it. And I'm like, you didn't what? Yeah.